Unless you're a rail fanatic, many people don't pay attention to the little boxes on the side of the line. Signal boxes were, and in some cases still are, a crucial part of the network. Over time, as technology improved, the use of signal boxes has become less and less, and the majority of the signalling is handled by 12 rail operating centres. The one in York handles the majority of Yorkshire. With the exception of Heritage Railways, Network Rail want the entire network to be under the control of ROC, making hundreds of signal boxes redundant. But what do you do with a signal box? Some, like Knaresborough, are listed buildings and cannot be removed, but some, like the Settle signal box, was afforded no such luxury. The signal box started life like any other in 1891. It was made into a Midland standard design, that being the Midland Type 2A, and was manufactured as a kit in Derby. The pieces would be taken to Settle train station to be assembled. Being a Type 2, the box was larger than other boxes, and this was to fit the large lever frame that would control the points in Settle's large goods yard. The yard would handle all sorts of freight, including coal, food, and had a cattle dock for live animals. It was a busy place, and the signalman would really have to be on his game, dealing with siding movements and of course dealing with the main line. In the 1960s, as with most of the network, road freight was on the increase, and due to this, British Rail started to close smaller yards that were underproductive. Unfortunately, Settle was one of them, and the yard was closed on the 12th of October 1970. The goods yard was not the only casualty, as many smaller stations were also earmarked to close. The yard and the shed were eventually demolished, and in time industrial units would be built as the land was sold. These buildings, in a nod to the railways past, would be known as the sidings. The signal box would continue to be in use, however only as its secondary task of overseeing the main line. Up and down the line, signal boxes were seeing their roles being made redundant. Few were preserved, but many were demolished. It would seem that the signal box at the Settle site would receive the same fate. However, luck would be on the box's side. The nearby station of Settle was the largest on the line, and a perfect base for the Friends of the Settle and Carlisle Railway, and they chose one of the station buildings as their base of operations. The team are a dedicated group of volunteers, and that made it their mission to restore the surviving stations to their former glory. Structures such as station masters' houses and waiting rooms, left abandoned, had been purchased and restored and used for holidaymakers and tourists. For Settle, the station was taking shape. However, one eyesore remained: the box. The signal box was still standing, but had been abandoned when mainline operations were transferred in 1984. 13 years of neglect and rot had taken its toll. The stairs and the balcony were not safe to stand on, while the windows were either missing or broken. The signal box in its current position was perfect for the junction, but less than perfect for the Friends of the Settle and Carlisle's plans. So the idea was to move the box to behind the station platform and safely away from the line. The first stage was to remove anything heavy. This included the 20-lever frame and its linkages. As the linkages had not been moved, they were numbered so they could be removed and restored when the signal box was in its final position. Once all the heavy equipment had been removed and stored away for safety, the next stage was to move the box itself. There was a couple of ways of tackling this problem. One was to take it apart and reassemble it. As it came in kit form, you would think it would come apart as easily, but being assembled for over 100 years, this wasn't feasible to come apart. It also was a lot of work for such little distance. The other option was to move it all in one go. Before the big move could begin, the box needed to have some decent protection. When a structure is moved whole, stresses can be put on it that it wasn't designed to bear. The box was no exception, and given its weakened state, there was more risk of collapse. To help alleviate the stress and to reduce the risk of the box flexing or twisting during the transfer, a large steel brace was built around it. Not only would this brace help support the structure, it would give the whole thing extra strength. Meanwhile, further up the road at the new site, an area was being prepped for the box's new home. A new concrete foundation had been prepped, complete with drainage. On the night of 14th of June 1997, all was ready for the big move. The old wooden supports that were holding the signal box in place were cut, and a large crane was poised and ready to lift the box onto 6 trolleys that waited on the track. With Network Rail's blessing and a complete possession order, a literal army of volunteers ensured that the box was secure and hand-pushed, yes, hand-pushed the box up the incline and into the station. Honestly, anyone watching the line that night would have done a double take of the box waddling up the main line. Once in the station, the trains took the box up again and set the box on its final destination. All was complete in a few short hours, and the customers travelled normally by the next morning, many none the wiser of the previous night's antics. But the majority of the work was yet to come. The box was covered in scaffolding and work started to restore the roof. Old timber was removed and holes repaired, with some parts having to be replaced altogether and needing specialist treatment. From the top down, the restored box was taking shape. New balconies were installed and the glass replaced. One of the last stages to complete the exterior was to add the station sign back up to its former glory. But the goal wasn't just to restore the outside, but the interior as well. The frame and the linkages were restored and the instruments brought in that was in keeping with the box. Finally, a large coal fire was completed the interior, giving it a warm and cosy look. But what's a signal box with no signals? Well, the Carlisle group got 2 of them. One, a distance signal that was sat at the head of Blair Nor Tunnel, and a home arm signal that was placed above it. The signal sits away from the main line, but is still visible from the box. But the purpose of the box was not just to look pretty, it had to serve something. Demonstration boxes are a rare commodity, and being that the majority of boxes are inaccessible to the general public, going to see the inside of a working box is very rare. By having the box in a place of safety, it would enable the public to not only go inside, but to have a go at pulling a few levers themselves and seeing them move the signals. The box is open most Saturdays, volunteer dependent, and you normally don't need to book. However, due to the box being restored as is, you have to be comfortable with stairs to gain access. But when you are inside and are lucky to be able to have a go, you better be prepared because those levers are heavier than you think.